Hello everyone, and welcome back to Natha and Deer's Guide to Everything, and welcome back to the Legend Forge, where we take characters from pop culture and we mould them into something close to D&D if we can do. This week we have a doozy for you. We have Megumi Fushiguro, and this was a request ages ago that I've only just got around to doing. I've had the character built for a long time, but regardless, here it is. And Megumi is from Jujutsu Kaisen, a great anime. I would recommend it to anybody. A quick update: the reason I haven't been posting too much is because I have moved house, as you can probably tell by the background. I had COVID, and a multitude of other things have just kind of got in the way of it, really. You've probably seen I've been uploading a few shorts just because they're way easier for me to produce. So if you're enjoying them, again, please sign off in the comments below if you want to see anything more specifically on that. I've been playing a lot of Elden Ring too in my spare time, which has been nice. But without further ado, I think it's about time we get into this week's episode of Legend Forge. Let's do it. So here we go, we are back in D&D Beyond. We're going to scroll all the way down to Megumi just down here. We're going to jump into edit and we're going to go from scratch. We have all the kind of homebrew content turned on, except for Rick and Morty and non-core is turned off. Multi-class requirements are on, but it doesn't really matter for us at this point. We've gone with a variant human because human, that's what he is. We've gone for languages infernal just so he can communicate with his shikigami, which is one of Megumi's, I guess, primary features. For an ability score increase, we've gone for wisdom and dexterity. Skills, we've gone proficiency in stealth. And a feat, we've gone with tough. This comes straight down to Megumi Fushiguro having very good durability. He takes a hit from Ayatodo and he takes a hit from Sukuna as well, and is still standing afterwards. You could take the resilient feat, I think, or perhaps warcast to give yourself an advantage on con saves, but I think tough makes the most sense here. Now we're going to move into the classes. We have 20 levels, 11 in monk, 9 in druid. Let's go over the monk ones first. So proficiency, we've got acrobatics, athletics and smith tools. Martial arts lets us use our dex for attacks and things like that, which obviously he is a martial artist primarily, that's what he functions with, but then his summons are kind of his thing. We have dedicated weapon, which is a kind of a fantastic optional class feature these days for the monk. We can use our key. Again, this is very much like the Yuji Itadori one when it comes to the monk side of things, but we've gone for a way of shadow with our monastic tradition. At third level we have deflect missiles, which kind of does what it says on the tin. At third level we also have shadow arts, which is our first thing from being the way of shadow. Starting when you choose a tradition at third level, you can use key to duplicate the effects of certain spells. As an action, you can spend 2 key points to cast darkness, dark vision, pass without trace, or silence without providing material components. Additionally, you get a minor illusion cantrip if you don't already know it. So this just gives us access to really, really cool kind of stealthy shadow spells and kind of leaning into that Chimera Shadow Garden kind of effect that Megumi does have, his very dark exterior, as it were. Fourth level we get quickened healing, which means we can stay in the fight a little bit longer, again playing into his constitution, his durability. For our ability score improvement at 4th level, we go for Dex and Wisdom. We have Slow Fall at 4th level also. I don't need to explain this one. They don't really take fall damage in animes, do they? Let's be honest. 5th level, we have an extra attack, obviously always needed as a martial artist. 5th level, we also get Stunning Strike, fantastic for locking down the battlefield, locking down a particular creature. We have key empowered strikes, so it means we can punch ghosts. So you could say this is when you get kind of cursed energy infused punches, things like that. We have a bit more unarmoured movement while we're not wearing armour or wielding a shield. At 6th level we also get Shadow Step, another way of shadow ability. At 6th level you get the ability to step from one shadow into another. When you're in dim light or darkness, as a bonus action you can teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space. You can see that it's also in dim light or darkness. You then have advantage on the first melee attack you make before the end of the turn. Now, Shadow Step specifically is designed to kind of work in tandem, I think, with like Chimera Shadow Garden, in which Megumi has a lot of extra abilities. He can summon shikigami at will, and he can double himself and things like this. But what the thing he can do is hide in another person's shadow. So I feel like this is kind of a perfect way to represent that, where you're hiding someone in a shadow, but actually you've teleported behind them, and you can give them a punch, a whack, whatever it might be. Really, really cool thematically and fits perfectly, I think. At 7th level we have Evasion, which means any AoE spell does less damage to us if we manage to save against it. 7th level we have Stillness of Mind. We can't be charmed or frightened, not really too in kind with the character, but it is what it is. It's a bonus ability that we get. Again, these aren't perfect, just a way to kind of get closer to achieving that Megumi style. 8th level we do double into Dexterity. 9th level we get even more unarmored movements improvements. We can run along vertical surfaces across liquids. Pretty insane. Don't think you can do that in the show, but I mean, hey ho. Our purity of body at 10th level makes us immune to disease and poison. Pretty good. He doesn't have that, I don't think, but again, this can't be perfect. We're trying to adapt something from something else into D&D. So we get a plus to 20 feet now to our unarmored movement instead. And at 11th level, our final way of shadows feature Cloak of Shadows. By 11th level, you're going to become one with shadows. When you're in an area of dim light or darkness, you can use your action to become invisible. Awesome. You remain invisible till you make an attack, cast a spell, or in an area of bright light. So again, this leans into being able to teleport behind people, hiding people's shadows, things like that, all from Chimera Shadow Garden, which is his domain expansion. Now we move on to the 9 levels in Druid, which gets us access to some spell casting, and this is what we needed to do to be able to summon our shikigami. So for proficiencies, we get light armor, medium armor, shields, doesn't really matter. Druidic, we know the language of druids. If you couldn't speak the animals already, now you can. If that's the language of shikigami, I don't know. We also get spell casting. We get a wild companion. We gain the ability to summon a spirit that assumes an animal form. You can expend a use of your wild shape feature to cast a find familiar spell without material components, and it can be a fae instead of a beast, but I guess you can kind of just choose however you want this to be. I think he has the divine dogs out the most, so you could say this is perhaps that, but we have other ways of doing that as well, so let's just continue. Wild shape, this is not something he does. Use it if you like, or don't if you're trying to be true to the character. It's up to you. It's just a thing of druids. We couldn't avoid it. For our druid circle, we've gone with Circle of the Shepherd, and I think it has to be this one, just so we can really go ham on the summoning and conjuring element of Megumi's fighting style. We get Speech of the Woods, which means we can converse with Fae, and we learn to read, speak, and write Sylvan. Again, doesn't really matter too much. Spirit Totem, again, another kind of redundant feature. This is not something we really use, but you could argue that the Bear Spirit could be Divine Dog Totality, the Hawk Spirit could be the Nue, the Hawk creature that he summons. So you have to kind of flavour these things. You have to do your best to try and make this work, but yeah. Really, we're just here for the spellcasting, to be honest, and the Mighty Summoner feature, which I'll get to in a second. We get a Wild Shape improvement at level 4. We're getting an ability score improvement where we double dip into Wisdom to make our spellcasting more powerful. At 6th level, we get Mighty Summoner. Beast and Fae creatures we summon are more resilient than normal. Any beast or Fae summoned or created by a spell that you cast gains the following benefits. The creature with more hit points than normal, 2 extra hit points per hit die. Fantastic. The damage from its natural weapons is considered magical for the purpose of immunity and resistance to non-magical attacks and damage. So again, perfect. We kind of have to have this really if this character is going to be viable. Otherwise, basically anything you fight at level 20 would be able to resist it. This is us being able to overcome other cursed creatures. Get another Wild Shape improvement at level 8, and then finally to round this out, we get another ability score improvement at level 8, which is double into Constitution. But the 9th level does give us access to 5th level spells, and that's why we are here. So let's move on now to the ability scores. I did do a random roll. As you can see, got a pretty good spread there. In the end, we went for 11 into Strength, 16 into Dex, 14 into Con, 13 into Intelligence, 16 into Wisdom, and 9 into Charisma. The Intelligence is a bit low because Megumi does have great tactical intellect on the battlefield, but we had to pump Wisdom for our spellcasting to be kind of viable, really. But if I could choose, I probably would bump that intelligence up a bit more, but I think Dex, Con, and Wisdom were all required for this character to work, so that's what we went with. Now we're on to description. We went for Inheritor because Megumi Fushiguro is a member of the Zenin family, which is kind of a noble house within the universe. I don't know too much about it, but all I know is that they value cursor techniques like the Ten Shadows technique that Megumi has. Like, they hold that in value above everything else. They'll literally kick people out of the family if they don't have a good one, basically, which is pretty crazy. Skill proficiencies in survival due to being, I guess, leaving that family particularly. And then we have Arcana just due to his cursed energy knowledge. This is Dragon Chest set. I mean, I had to pick something. It is what it is. And we don't need anything else from this screen. Everything else is whatever you choose it to be. Right, now let's jump into the character sheet and I'll show you what it looks like altogether. So here we are, you can see some fantastic stats. We have a 20 in Dex, 20 in Wisdom, 16 in Con for that toughness. We do have 203 HP. I think that tough feat does some real work. It gives us about 40 HP or 45 HP, I forget exactly which, but really, really good across the board. Our physical saving throws are fantastic, our Wisdom one's alright. And this is where I could say you probably could benefit from Warcaster or Resilient or something like that into Constitution, just to give you advantage on those saves, but it's not something we could afford to do to make this character work. So what we'll do first off, I think, is take a look at my homebrew for this specifically. I designed one item for this because I know in some of my older videos I went a bit overboard with it. Just the one thing which I very much remember from the show thinking that is badass. Now, he's very good with weapons, Megumi, but his favourite, until it shattered, spoilers, was the jet black sword, and that's all I could find it was known as. Didn't really have a name, just a jet black sword. And this thing changed as long as it was exposed to shadows and cursed energy. It became kind of more deadly, and then you could expel it all at once. Really, really cool little item. But what we've done with this is we've called it a dedicated weapon. It's a +1 weapon. It wasn't like world beating or anything, but it just was really, really cool, so I thought I would make it. While attuned to this weapon, you gain the following benefits. When you make an attack with this weapon in dim light or darkness and hit, you deal an additional 2d6 necrotic damage to the target, so favourably we should always be in dim light and darkness with our Shadow Arts Monk and stuff like that. As a bonus action, you can summon and dismiss this weapon, shunting it into an extra mental space within your own shadow when dismissed. And again, Megumi just pulls this kind of from himself. So storing things in his shadow is part of his, I don't want to say gimmick, part of his power, basically, and his ability to move between shadows. So we're really leaning into that, makes it more like a warlock weapon at this point, like a pact weapon. And then finally, its bread and butter, so its big feature is Shadow Expulsion. You can imbue the sword with Engulfing Shadow, briefly bring it out to its maximum potential. As a bonus action, you imbue the sword with power, extending its reach to 10 feet for the duration. If a creature you hit with a melee attack has an evil alignment, the damage from this sword ignores resistances and immunities, and the target can't regain hit points until the start of your next turn as it draws the energy out of them. I thought that might be really cool. Additionally, all attacks made with this weapon in dim light or darkness are made with advantage, always good. And this magical effect lasts for 1 minute or until dismissed, no action required, or dispelled. And once you use this, you can't use it again until the next dawn. So it's not ridiculous. It's pretty damn powerful. I would want this, definitely, if I was someone that's skulking in the shadows a lot. But yeah, very, very cool. And obviously, if you want to add this, this will be published at the same time as this video. So feel free to search Jet Black Sword or bracket NGTE to find it. So now we've kind of gone over the main weapon, his main kind of, I guess, fighting style. Now we're going to go more into the summons that he used. I've made a few notes on the spells just so I don't forget, because there's quite a few. Guidance as a cantrip, because I thought, I mean, why not? Minor Illusion just comes from Shadow Arts, could be useful to distract enemies in darkness, things like that. I thought Absorb Elements, because again of the cursed energy knowledge, you could say that he can react to something and try and absorb a hit. We have Animal Friendship. You'll probably find, actually, a lot of these spells are based around perhaps him talking to these creatures, but he seems to just have a telepathic link with what he wants them to do. But this makes the character function within the world of D&D as well. So we've gone for Animal Friendship, which basically means we can convince the beast that we mean it no harm, and we can basically have a chat with it. Respawn allows us to take that friendship and turn it into a proper telepathic link, and then that creature becomes our ally. They get advantage on attack rolls and stuff if we're alongside them. Really, really cool. Doesn't last for long, but could be useful. Our second level spells, we have Darkness, which we get from Shadow Arts. We're going to use that a lot. It's kind of a mini Chimera Shadow Garden. I would probably maybe allow to upcast this, maybe to increase the area that it takes up. I know that's not canon, but if you really wanted to lean into the character concept, then that could be something fun to do. We have Dark Vision, which I think we're definitely going to need, and we have it twice actually. So you could remove that from your Druid spell list because you get it at will anyway. Literally at will. Dark Vision, we can always see in the dark. That's a little oversight from me there, apologies. We have Pass Without a Trace to stay stealthy in those dark moments. Silence to keep us hidden. And then we have Summon Beast. Now these summon spells are a little bit new, and they have these kind of generic stat blocks that kind of are all encompassing a few things. So you could use this as much as you like. And again, this is only a second level spell, so we've got 3 of these. You can make this into whatever you want. So you could do Divine Dogs, you could do Divine Dog Totality if you want to stretch it to that. And we could do the New, the Toad, or the Wells Unknown Abyss, which is the kind of the toad with wings. You could flavour it however you want, but this would be like I guess a lower level version of one of those creatures, a fairly basic bestial spirit, shikigami. Next up we have Conjure Animals, and specifically this is Fey creatures, but you could do 1 Beast of Chalimate in 2 Beasts of Chalimate in 1. So with this you could go for, you know, that wouldn't be very useful, but you could go for frogs, things like that. What you really want to look for here is like giant toad, giant eagle. That's kind of bang on what you're after for representing the Nue and the toads and things like that. And you can obviously upcast this. You can also get all the way up to a saber-toothed tiger, which I thought would be a really good way to encompass the Divine Dog Totality, with the dire wolf being the 2 divine dogs when he has them as a pair early on in the series. Then you go for the lower ones like the rabbit escape feature, which I don't think has in the anime yet, but it is in the manga. The rabbit escape feature, you could just summon a load of rabbits to just cause chaos in the area so you could escape, slinking back into the shadows. Next up we have Summon Fae, and I don't really have an explanation for this one, to be honest with you. I think you could just flavour this however you want, really. Yeah, I'd say you just want as many spells as possible to be able to summon these creatures. I feel like you don't have to justify it. You could make your own shikigami, perhaps, but if you really want to embody the character, I guess you stay canon and say it's always a toad, or it's always a weird bird thing that can shoot lightning, whichever way you want to go about it. But moving on, we have Conjure Minor Elementals, and obviously we know he has access to some kind of elemental-ish creatures. You see I've got a note here, general shikigami. You could just flavour this as whatever you want. You could say the toad now becomes an ice mephit, and when he shoots the water out his mouth it becomes ice, or you could maybe do the magma mephit and just change the damage type to lightning instead, something along those lines, and obviously ask your DM to approve all this stuff. And this would be a minor version of the elephant that he can summon, which we see once or twice. We have Conjure Wooden Beings, which again is Fey creatures, so not quite as useful, but if you wanted a few dogs to come alongside you, sprites, satyrs, dryads, see how it gives you some examples there. You can use D&D Beyond's extras feature Summon to find all the creatures that would be eligible for this. And again, the Fey creatures are a bit of a stretch, but it is what it is. Next up we have Hallucinatory Terrain, which now I know domain expansions aren't hallucinatory, they're not illusions, they are there, they take this creature into another domain, but I think the best way to represent this would be maybe a combination of hallucinatory terrain and a few other things to represent his Chimera Shadow Garden. This is a 150-foot cube. You can make it sound and feel like anything you want, which is really, really good, and I think it does represent it in a certain way. You could make it very, very dark in there. You can make it like in a dark crevasse place, and then you've always got your advantage with dim light, darkness, things like that. I have more ideas for this though, which we'll get into when we get to the 5th level spells, but now we move to Summon Elemental, which is another elemental spirit with these generic stat blocks. You could choose what it is, so you choose water, so you can cast Max Elephant basically. Then we move on to the big spells, which are the 5th levels, which we only have one of, so you'd have to choose basically. We can go with Conjure Elemental again, and I would say this is the proper version of Max Elephant, but again we've put a 4th level spell slot in there so you have some leeway so you can cast it more than once, so it doesn't seem too restrictive basically when you're trying to role play as Megumi, if that's what you wanted. But you can in fact go for a full-on level challenge rating 5 water elemental here. What I would probably argue with the DM is say, can I kind of make this, maybe give it the health of an elephant, give it some of the physical attacks that might have, and you kind of mix those two creatures together if you wanted to. I think I would allow that as a DM, just got to make sure it's not OP, that's all. But yeah, Water Elemental is straight up what the Max Elephant is. Shooting blasts of water at creatures could be really, really cool. Then we have Summon Draconic Spirit, another thing that's only appeared in the manga, not in this show as far as I'm aware, and this is to summon, let me get this name right, Divine General Mahoraga, which I don't think we've seen. And honestly, I think it would be a higher level spell slot than this, but we just don't have access to it. We've only got so many levels in Druid, unfortunately. But this Draconic Spirit is pretty powerful, and you would just flavour it to represent that. And again, not everybody here will probably have manga knowledge, same as me, but if you do, hopefully this is a good way to kind of embody that particular creature. And then finally we have Wrath of Nature, which I thought would be a great way to again represent Chimera Shadow Garden. So here's my suggested combo. This is a concentration spell, so we can't concentrate on anything else at the same time, unfortunately, but that's okay. What we do is we cast Dark Vision on ourselves, so we can see in the dark. We do Hallucinatory Terrain to make it darker, or the darkness spell, and then within that range you also cast Wrath of Nature, which is concentration. And this makes basically everything around, like the rocks, the trees, the grass, it basically makes everything either rough terrain or it starts attacking them. So what you could do with this to represent the domain expansion and all the things that can do. The glimpse that we got of the show from his domain expansion, this Chimera Shadow Garden, is he could summon a lot in there, like every single creature in his arsenal. So you could just argue that the trees are the elephants, the roots and vines are the birds. Do you know what I mean? You just have to flavour it, you have to find a way to kind of pull it all together to make it work. Last but not least, I would recommend kind of gathering, if you're going to do this, gather a list of creatures that you're eligible to summon, just so you're not rooting around for the stat blocks during the game, slowing everything down, because summoning is a nightmare for DMs to run, to be honest. I've done literally just like one summon a few creatures around Druid before, and oh my gosh, it's just such a pain in the arse to keep track of all the things moving around. The initiatives become long. Regardless, keep track of it as best you can, alleviate some of the pressure from your DM. But that is it. That is Megumi Fushiguro from Jujutsu Kaisen for D&D 5e. I hope this was helpful in creating your own version of this character. A lot of research went into it to kind of a lot of fine-tuning to try and find the right levels to make it work cohesively, and I think this does, because the wisdom from the Druid works with the monk, key points, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, really, really effective, and it seems really fun to play. I might actually go for a Circle of the Shepherd's Druid at some point. It seems really fun just to have just an army of animals, be like Ace Ventura or something. Oh my god, next Legend Forge, Ace Ventura. Could be, maybe. But yeah, thanks for watching. This has been Nath and Deer's Guide to Everything. This has been the Legend Forge. If you've enjoyed this, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. With any builds you want to see me do in future, leave the comments down below, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon. Bye bye.